Does he know y'all have this in the doc?
I would doubt he knows.
So when this airs, that'll be the first time.
The justice system wasn't ready for this. Nobody was. Not the prosecutors, not the defense, and especially not the judge. Because the moment Netflix's new footage went public,
I got my MTV out. Savage! I'm a savage! Oh! I'm a savage! Whatever I want, I'm going to get! Whatever I want, I have to get!
the courtroom walls, the same walls that once protected Diddy's sentence, began to crack.
Tell me about It's 2022 and I'm still a savage! Whatever I want, I get!
People watched the documentary for entertainment, but inside the federal system, it triggered something far more dangerous. It triggered a review that could push Diddy's sentence straight toward life. This wasn't supposed to happen. Documentaries don't influence federal judges.
What's next? What's next? I gotta get it. I'm not gonna stay fucking down. What's next? Give me something else. What can't you do? I can do it. I can do anything.
Clips found outside the courtroom don't rewrite sentencing guidelines. But this footage did something no one expected. It made the judge respond. Not with a statement, not with a denial, not with silence, but with a formal order, an order demanding clarification, analysis, an immediate review of whether Diddy's current sentence is still appropriate, or whether the new Netflix footage reveals a pattern the court can no longer ignore. And that's when the panic started. Lawyers scrambling overnight, prosecutors signaling potential enhancement, court staff whispering behind locked doors, social media turning into a second courtroom, replaying a clip the real courtroom never saw. Because the question now isn't whether the footage is shocking. The question is whether it's powerful enough to change a man's fate. For the first time since Diddy entered federal custody, the judge's tone has shifted. And when a judge shifts, sentences can shift with him. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere turned cold the moment the footage surfaced. Judges don't like surprises, especially not ones that make them question whether the original sentence was too soft. Prosecutors immediately forwarded the Netflix clip to the judge's chambers under a category called post-sentencing materials, a rare and serious classification normally reserved for new crimes, new victims, or evidence of escalating behavior. But this wasn't evidence gathered by investigators. It wasn't part of a sealed file. It didn't come from a witness deposition. It came from a documentary, and that's what makes it dangerous. The judge reportedly watched the footage in silence, replaying certain sections more than once, focusing not just on what was shown, but what it implied. Judges don't react emotionally, they react structurally. They look for patterns, they look for context. They look for whether something changes the legal understanding of a defendant's character or history. And for the first time since the trial ended, this judge saw something he wasn't prepared for. That's when the questions started circulating inside the building. Who verified this footage? Why wasn't it submitted to the court? Does this qualify as new information? Does it change risk assessment? Does it reflect a pattern? And the most feared question of all, does this justify a harsher sentence? The law is rigid, but judges have enormous discretion when it comes to interpreting patterns of behavior, escalation, and intent. If a judge believes new information makes a sentence insufficient, he can order a review. He can request arguments. He can reopen parts of the process. And in extreme cases, he can push for sentence enhancement, which includes the possibility of life. No one in the legal world expected this case to reach that threshold, until now. Inside MDC Brooklyn, the news hit even harder. Officers whispered about the judge's reaction. Inmates passed newspapers and fragments of online articles printed out by family members. Every whisper pointed in the same direction. Something changed, something big. Diddy, who once believed his sentence was settled, now faces a possibility that terrifies even hardened inmates. The possibility that a judge believes his punishment is no longer enough. This alone creates psychological pressure most people will never understand. When the system reopens its eyes after closing them, the horizon changes, the ground shifts, even the walls around you feel different. Netflix's footage didn't just reveal something, it destabilized something. And once a system is destabilized, anything can happen. As the footage circulated, Public reaction fed into the system like wildfire. Social media, legal commentators, analysts, former collaborators, everyone began interpreting the clip in real time. And judges don't live in soundproof boxes. They know public confidence in sentencing matters. They know unresolved questions weaken the legitimacy of rulings. They know perception can influence stability. That doesn't mean judges bend to public opinion, but it means they cannot ignore it. Behind the scenes, prosecutors began drafting internal memos arguing that the footage supports reevaluation of defendants' behavioral patterns. That phrase alone is enough to make any legal team panic. A pattern gives the court power. A pattern allows the judge to claim the original sentence did not fully account for risk. A pattern opens the gate to enhancement. Meanwhile, Diddy's lawyers scrambled to respond. They weren't prepared for this. How could they be? You can't prepare for evidence you didn't know existed. You can't build arguments around footage you never saw. And you can't defend against something that was never part of the official case. That's the real danger of this moment. The defense is blind. The prosecution isn't. And the judge is alert. If you're watching this right now, let me ask you something. Do you believe a documentary clip, even if real, should impact sentencing? Or does this open a dangerous door where the court starts reacting to public media? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. This is going to be a heated debate. And make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next update. Because the moment the judge makes his final decision, everything changes. Now let's get back to the story. Because the most important part isn't what the footage shows, it's what the judge saw in it. And the judge saw enough to issue a response that shook the entire system. The judge's reaction to the Netflix footage didn't stay inside the courtroom for long. Word spread quietly at first, a whispered update between clerks, a murmured conversation in a courthouse hallway, a late-night phone call to someone who shouldn't have known anything at all. But whispers move fast in a case like this. And soon the entire legal community sensed something had shifted. Something fundamental, something that wasn't supposed to happen. The footage didn't just spark curiosity, it sparked legal momentum. And momentum inside a federal court is dangerous. It means the ground is moving. It means decisions, once considered final, suddenly feel temporary. It means a sentence, even one already delivered, can be pulled into the light again and examined with new eyes. Eyes belonging to a judge who no longer sounds satisfied. Behind the scenes, the judge requested a complete set of behavioral assessments, incident reports, sealed motions, and prior complaints tied to Diddy's history, both inside and outside the courtroom. That alone was a red flag. Judges only review full behavioral histories when they suspect the original sentence didn't reflect the complete picture. And when a judge questions the picture, the entire portrait can be redrawn. Prosecutors sensed the shift immediately. Their tone changed. Their language changed. Their posture changed. They submitted a notice indicating the footage presents potential relevance to the defendant's long-term behavioral pattern. That phrase is not casual. It's a legal stone dropped into deep water, and the ripples reach everything around it. A pattern means escalation. A pattern means intent. A pattern means the past wasn't isolated, it was connected. And connected patterns give judges authority to increase sentences. The defense team responded in full panic mode. Meetings through the night, emergency motions drafted at dawn, calls to experts, consultants, outside specialists, anyone who might help counter the growing narrative that Netflix had unintentionally delivered, a blow more powerful than any courtroom witness. Because the defense knows the truth buried under all of this. Judges rarely reopen sentencing discussions, but when they do, they don't do it without purpose. Outside the courthouse, the public's reaction added more fuel. People weren't just talking, they were dissecting, breaking down the clip frame by frame, comparing it to old allegations, adding it to timelines, connecting dots the courtroom never saw. Narratives began forming faster than the legal system could control them, and the judge saw that too. Judges always see the public storm. They pretend they don't, but they do. What matters is whether the storm reveals something the case missed the first time around. And to this judge, the Netflix footage appeared to reveal just that, a missing piece, a clue, a context that could reshape interpretation of Diddy's prior actions. Something that wasn't obvious before, but feels unavoidable now. Inside the prosecutor's office, attorneys debated how aggressively they should push for sentence modification. Some argued for caution, documentaries are entertainment, not evidence. Others argued the opposite, that the footage reflected a side of the defendant relevant to risk assessment and sentencing integrity. But then something happened that changed the tone of everything. The judge issued a clarification request. That may sound subtle, it isn't. A clarification request means we need to determine if this footage changes the legal landscape. It means the judge believes the documentary may not be just noise, it might be a signal. And if it is a signal, it could justify a harsher penalty. Inside Diddy's legal team, the panic grew sharper. They weren't just fighting public opinion anymore. They were fighting a structural shift inside the judicial system, one triggered by a piece of footage they had no chance to challenge, contextualize, or exclude. Worse, prosecutors submitted an internal memo suggesting the footage may raise concerns regarding behavioral escalation. That phrase, behavioral escalation, is one of the most dangerous indicators in federal sentencing. It implies risk of future harm. It implies unresolved danger. It implies the sentence imposed earlier may not protect the public sufficiently. And when a judge sees potential escalation, the following two options appear on the table: enhancement or full reconsideration. Either path can lead to life. Meanwhile, within MDC Brooklyn, tension rippled through the facility. Inmates talked. Officers whispered. Rumors move faster than facts. The judge is reviewing again. They might add years. They might upgrade the term entirely. Netflix messed him up worse than any witness. Even Diddy could feel the shift, not from official messages, but from the way time changed around him, from the way guards watched him, from the way conversations hushed as he approached, from the sudden realization that the stability of his sentence, the one thing he thought was fixed, might vanish overnight. That kind of uncertainty is psychological punishment on its own. Back in the legal world, analysts debated the boundaries of judicial authority. Some insisted a documentary should never shape sentencing. Others cited rare cases where external materials, interviews, recordings, public reactions influenced a judge's interpretation of intent and pattern. The truth is simple but unsettling. Judges cannot use documentary footage as direct evidence, but they can use it to question whether the original sentence fully captured the defendant's history. And that question is enough to reopen everything. More troubling is the possibility that prosecutors may gather additional testimony or records now that the footage has surfaced. If even one new voice steps forward, even one document aligns with what Netflix revealed, the judge could argue that the sentencing range should be reevaluated. Inside the courthouse, the judge's demeanor shifted, subtle but unmistakable, colder, firmer, less forgiving. The kind of shift that tells attorneys the window for leniency has closed. One particular meeting behind closed doors changed the tone completely. Sources say the judge spoke with a senior sentencing advisor who reviewed the Netflix footage independently. Their conclusion reportedly raised the stakes. The footage may indicate behavioral consistency across prior allegations. Behavioral consistency. The two words every defendant fears, because consistency means pattern. Pattern means escalation. Escalation means danger, and danger opens the door to life. Prosecutors immediately moved to prepare formal documents outlining potential arguments should the judge request a hearing. Defense attorneys scrambled for psychological experts and character witnesses, anticipating a war they never imagined fighting this late in the process. Meanwhile, legal researchers referenced extremely rare cases where a judge revisited a sentence after public material surfaced, emphasizing that, although uncommon, it is absolutely possible. All of this built toward one inevitable moment: the judge's official internal response. He didn't dismiss the footage. He didn't call it irrelevant. He didn't treat the documentary as noise. He issued a declaration stating the footage raises questions the court cannot ignore when evaluating the integrity of the initial sentence. And when a judge says he cannot ignore something, it means he won't. This is where the fear becomes real. This is where the sentence becomes unstable. This is where the unimaginable becomes a possibility. Because now the question isn't whether the footage matters, it's how much weight the judge plans to give it. And the weight he chooses will determine whether Diddy's sentence remains what it is today or transforms into something far more permanent. The judge's declarations spread through the legal system like a cold shock. At first, only a handful of officials knew about it, then a few clerks, then a few prosecutors. And within hours, the entire courthouse felt different, as if everyone inside realized the ground under Diddy's sentence was no longer solid, not stable, not safe. Something had shifted, something irreversible. Judges don't use phrases like cannot ignore unless they're preparing for movement. Their language is coded, precise, intentional. And when a judge signals concern, it's not just a comment, it's a warning. A warning that the original sentence may no longer match the weight of what the court believes to be true. From that moment on, everything accelerated. Prosecutors began assembling evidence summaries, behavioral timelines, old reports that were once considered too weak, too scattered, too circumstantial to present in open court. But now, under the new lens created by the Netflix footage, those scattered pieces began forming shapes. Shapes that looked like patterns. Patterns that raised questions. Questions that the judge was now prepared to confront directly. Inside the defense camp, panic sharpened into something colder. Desperation. Their arguments weakened not because they lacked legal footing, but because the judge's perspective had changed. Once a judge feels there may be unanswered questions, the burden shifts. Suddenly, the defense is no longer defending against the past, they're defending against perception. And perception, once formed, is nearly impossible to dismantle. That's the real danger of this moment. Not the footage, not the documentary, but the possibility that the judge now sees Diddy through a different lens, one shaped not by courtroom evidence, but by character assessment and behavioral implication. Federal judges hold enormous power over sentencing. They can review a defendant's history, personal conduct, public actions, private accusations, and overall risk to the community. And if they believe the original sentence failed to reflect the totality of that behavior, they can push it higher. Higher all the way to life imprisonment. The legal community is split. Some believe the judge is simply covering himself, ensuring no accusation of oversight falls on the court. Others believe the judge has already made up his mind, and the review is merely the path he must walk to justify a larger consequence. And then there are those who whisper the darkest possibility that someone behind the scenes, prosecutors, advisors, government agencies, is quietly encouraging the judge to consider a harsher penalty, encouraging him to make an example. Because if a high-profile defendant like Diddy can have his sentence reconsidered based on new public footage, it sends a message far louder than any courtroom statement. A message about influence, about accountability, about power no longer shielding people the way it used to. And that message is already echoing through the industry. Executives who once defended him now refuse to speak. Former collaborators avoid interviews. Publicists warn clients to distance, distance, distance. Nobody wants to stand near a man whose sentence might transform before the world's eyes. Not because they know what's coming, but because they don't. Uncertainty is more terrifying than guilt. Meanwhile, prosecutors submitted a confidential advisory that struck fear even in seasoned attorneys. It stated the footage may reflect behavioral indicators relevant to sentencing enhancement. Behavioral indicators. Those two words are a quiet earthquake. They imply continuation, repetition, risk. They imply the judge may not just adjust the sentence, he may redefine it entirely. Inside MDC Brooklyn, Diddy moves through the facility with a new weight on his shoulders. A man who once navigated fame, wealth, influence, and power now waits for a single voice, a judge's voice, to determine whether his years behind bars remain measured or become indefinite. The uncertainty is suffocating. Time feels heavier, every hour stretches, every sound echoes, every rumor hits harder. Because once your sentence becomes unstable, your entire future feels like it's dissolving beneath you. The Netflix footage didn't break him. The judge's reaction did. And outside those walls, the world keeps replaying the same question. Did the clip reveal something the courtroom missed, or did it reveal something the courtroom ignored? Legal analysts are already preparing for the possibility that a hearing could be scheduled. Such a hearing would be explosive, televised, dissected, debated endlessly. It wouldn't just reconsider the footage. It would revisit the entire case, Every allegation, every claim, every silence, every unresolved detail that once slipped past the system. And if that hearing happens, one outcome rises above all others. Sentence enhancement to life. Not mandatory, not guaranteed, but possible. The most dangerous word in law. Possible. And possibility is all a judge needs. As the documentary continues spreading and more voices react, pressure on the court grows. Judges may claim they don't feel that pressure, but they do. They know the public is watching. They know headlines shape perception. They know decisions made in silence can echo loudly across the country. That's why this moment feels like a crossroads, not just for Diddy, but for the entire system. A system being forced to confront something uncomfortable. Did they sentence a man based on the full truth, or just part of it? Because Netflix didn't submit evidence. They submitted perspective, and perspective can be just as powerful. In the final stage of this unfolding storm, the judge prepares to issue his next order, one that will determine whether this review ends quietly or opens the door to the harshest sentence the system can impose. And with each passing day, the tension builds, the silence grows. The outcome becomes a question bigger than guilt or innocence. It becomes a question of consequences, and consequences have no mercy. Before we close this chapter, I want to hear from you directly. Do you believe the judge should increase Diddy's sentence after watching the Netflix footage? Or should courtroom evidence remain the only thing that matters? Tell me your thoughts down below. Your opinion is part of this story now. And if you want to stay ahead of everything happening next, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, because if the judge makes the move people are whispering about, the next headline won't just be breaking news. It will be the moment Diddy's entire fate changes forever. Because if this footage can move a judge, it can move a sentence. And maybe it already has.